Hello and welcome everyone. In this video we will be looking at the part where I ask GPT to summarize Morella by Edgar Allan Poe. The first sentence, of course, is that Morella is a story that was published in 1835, written by Edgar Allan Poe, so this is correct. GPT then tells us that the story tells the story of a man who is deeply in love with his wife, Morella, and here I've written the 3 question marks, which means I'm suspicious of this statement. We know that the story states that the fires were not of arrows, so the narrator was not necessarily attracted to Morella, but he also states that he never spoke of passion or thought of love, and there comes a time when he longed with an earnest and consuming desire for the moment of Morella's decease. So not only is he not really that much in love with her, he's not attracted to her, but he comes to the point to where he wishes that she was dead, pretty much. GPT then states, however, Morella is a woman of great intellect and knowledge. That's correct. GPT then states that her husband is unable to understand her. And I think that's kind of off, because really what this line in the story intends to say, just this complicated language is all a fancy way of saying that mysticism wasn't his thing. So the idea that her husband is not able to understand her should be more like he doesn't really relate to her. So this explains why my wife's manner oppressed me as a spell. He is not into mysticism, and eventually it gives him the creeps. GPT then says that Morella dies giving birth to their child, which is correct, and her husband is consumed by grief, so that's questionable. We learned just a moment ago that the mystery of his wife's manner oppressed him as a spell. We also know that he states that he longed with an earnest and consuming desire for the moment of Morella's decease. So he's creeped out by her, and he wants her dead. Is kind of a crude way of saying it, but it plays into the idea that after a while, her being alive starts to become irksome. So when she dies, it would be difficult to argue that he was consumed by grief. He becomes obsessed with her memory and with understanding her. He's not obsessed with her memory. What's happening is that their child looks incredibly like Morella's, and that is common in all families, unless there's an adoption taking place. This is genetic inheritance at play. He is freaked out because he didn't like Morella, but since this is a different person, this is his daughter, he's obligated to love her, but she looks so much like Morella. GPT then states that after her death, the husband discovers that Morella had been practicing forbidden arts of magic. Okay, so he already knew that, transferred her soul into their child before dying. This is an assumption that he makes because his daughter looks so much like Morella. Now the supernatural theory, if you're reading into it with all the fantastical sort of insinuation that Poe would have enjoyed instilling in people, then you could say that reincarnation is real and that a soul has been transferred. If we look at it at a secular level, this is Morella's daughter looking so much like her that it causes in him a fantasy that it is Morella. And part of it has to do with conscience, because he feels guilty that he did not love Morella. GPT then says that the child, now possessed by Morella's soul, begins to speak and exhibit knowledge beyond her years. So this is, in essence, correct. It's more of the genetic inheritance. The text even states that day after day did I discover new points of resemblance in the child to her mother. GPT then says the husband becomes convinced that the child is Morella reincarnated, and he's overjoyed to be reunited with her. I put the question marks there because the text actually says that he was in horror and grief swept over it in clouds. It here is the notion that the child has been reincarnated. So he's not experiencing joy, he's experiencing horror and grief. He watched it with agonizing anxiety. So this statement doesn't even make sense. GPT then says, however, as the child continues to grow, she begins to resemble Morella less and less, and the husband becomes increasingly disturbed by this. This is the complete opposite of what happens in the story. She looks like Morella more and more, not less and less. GPT then tells us that the story explores themes of love, obsession, and the limits of human understanding. It also touches on themes of the supernatural and the dangers of delving into forbidden knowledge. So I would suggest that the obsession is more a symptom of guilt, and you would want to explore guilt and conscience more than you would explore obsession, because the narrator married Morella without fully being in that type of love situation that would characterize the desire for marriage. What we do have, though, is Morella's interest in rebirth and reincarnation and life after death and potentially even immortality. And we have the idea of revenge involved, because at one point in time Morella states that she knew and she knows she could be upset and angry about that. She's hurt, she's resentful. So this is probably a little more along the lines of themes that you would want to explore. And then there is supernatural, of course, and then delving into forbidden knowledge. I don't know if it's dangerous for Morella, because it kind of seems like she's making it work to her advantage. So there you have it. GPT summarizes Morella by Edgar Allan Poe and comes up with some evident misfires. This is the whole summary as it came to me. I'll leave it on screen for a minute so that you can read it, so that you know that I didn't make anything up. And with that, I want to thank you for watching, and I would encourage you to use ChatGPT as a starting point, and would recommend that you research what ChatGPT tells you before producing any papers for study. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.